In an open, sunny field, the sounds of a fight are heard coming from a girl in a dungeon. The sounds wake up our protagonist from his nap, and while still half asleep, he wonders why he is hearing video game sounds at all. Right in front of his face, a girl is standing there while wondering if the MC is a human. She comes to the conclusion that it must be a human-shaped piece of meat and decided to cut it up for her dinner. We will just ignore her willingness to eat human-shaped meat, but when MC hears that she is about to dice him up, he jumps up immediately to save his own life. The girl jumps back and is astonished that the drop was in fact actually a human. But the guy is more annoyed that she didn't even bother to check beforehand and immediately went for the meal prep. But the girl is still confused that a human was a slime drop. She exclaims that normal slime would only drop bean sprouts, but finding a human in one is unprecedented. The guy hears all this and goes, "Hold up, wait a minute, is this BH crazy?" But then she looks at him like he is the crazy one for knowing that bean sprouts come from slimes. I mean, come on. This was elementary school stuff. She decides that it's not worth explaining things to him and just goes to fight a slime so that she can prove that bean sprouts come from them. Luckily, a slime shows up just then, and she engages it in battle. She eventually smashes the slime into a puddle with her giant hammer, and bean sprouts are indeed dropped. Now the guy looks like the stupid one here, and he begins to have a mental crisis. What kind of crazy world is he in right now? He asks the girl if this is really how bean sprouts are made, and she looks at him like he is stupid again, and tells him that everything comes from monster drops. Everything from your food to your equipment is gotten from monster drops. That's just common knowledge. She then proceeds to call him an idiot. The guy follows her as she is walking through the dungeon and asks her if they are still in Japan. But she has never heard of the word, let alone the place. He then asks if they are at least still on Earth, but she also has never heard of Earth. They continue walking and the girl comes across another slime, which she squishes with her hammer again, and the guy asks why she's only killing slimes. She answers that it is because the dungeon they are in is level 1 and only spawns slimes. He then asks why she doesn't go after the higher level stuff, and she admits to being a noob. She says that if one trains hard, they might be able to move up a level and go to level 2. She then shows him a large board on the wall, which is called the status board. She presses her hand against the crystal, and the board shows her status, which looks a lot like my report card. The guy analyzes her stats and concludes that she must be going for a power type build. He then looks back to the screen and notices that there is a second page to the status. The girl then shows him the next page, which contains the drop status. This is basically the luck stat in gacha games and dictates what drop you'll get when you kill a monster. After learning all of this, he now wants to try checking his status on the board, and when he puts his hand on the crystal, he has a status that would immediately evict him from any Asian family. With those stats, the only level he is ever going to get is level 1. He then checks his drop status and is afraid to look at the screen. The girl looks at the screen for him and tells him that his drop stats are really bad too. But when he looks up, he sees that all of his drop stats are S rank. They have different opinions on what S means. The girl thinks that S is below F, so it must be really low, but the guy thinks that S is meant to be high, so they put it to the test. He looks around for a weapon, so that he can kill something but doesn't find anything, so the girl offers him her hammer. But it proves to be too much weight for the guy's arms. She then pulls out a bamboo spear, and this one should work. Another slime approaches and the guy sets about trying to kill it. But the slime is dodging his attacks at first, but then it gets stabbed and melts into a puddle. He eats a lot of bean sprouts as his drop, and the girl is surprised. In the 2 years she has been at this dungeon, she has never seen so many drops at once. This proves that S is definitely above A in the ranking system. The guy's stomach begins to growl and the girl suggests that they eat together. He tries the bean sprouts that she prepared and he loves them, so much so that he starts crying. It has been so long since he was last able to eat a warm meal with another person. He worked himself to the hospital on Earth. Then when he finally got out, he worked even more until he ended up here as a slime drop. He's thinking about all the time he wasted and how stupid it was for him to work himself to death. But then the girl hugs him out of nowhere. Even though she has no idea what he is talking about, she tells him that he will surely get rewarded for all the time he put into work, eventually. He thanks the girl for her encouragement and asks her if there is anywhere to sleep in this world. She tells him that there is a village outside the dungeon that he can find some lodging at and tells him to hurry since she's going to sleep soon. He asks her if she is actually going to sleep in the dungeon, and she explains that she has terrible drops, so she can't afford to live in an apartment, even though it is her dream to be able to live in one. She wakes up, farms slimes, eats bean sprouts, and goes to sleep. It's not much, but honest work. She offers him her bamboo spear to help him with his hunting, and he promises to return the spear to her later. He asks for her name, and she tells him that it is Emily Brown, and he tells her that his name is Seto Ryota, but she has a hard time pronouncing it. Later, Seto is in the village and he is finally starting to understand this world's economy. The currency of the world is pylos, and a pile of bean sprouts will get you 200 pylos, but a room will cost you 2,000 pylos per night, and some food is 500 pylos. Now that he knows the prices of the things that he wants, he sets about murdering slime to make his money. After a few days, he brings Emily to an apartment in the village. He shows her the apartment and she is amazed that he was able to afford this in only 3 days of work. It costs him 20,000 a month and she's even more amazed. But then Seto hands her the keys to the apartment and tells her that she can live here. She doesn't want to accept it, but Seto insists, and he even states that he will pay for all the rent for her. This is his way of thanking her for the meal she shared with him. He then tries to leave, but Emily pulls him back and tells him that he should stay here. It's clearly overworking himself and she can make some more soup for him. And she'll stay by his side and make soup for him whenever he wants, so he should live with her. The next day, Seto goes to the guild to exchange some of the bean sprouts that he has collected with one of the attendants, Urza. She weighs out his bean sprouts and his total comes out to 1,900, but she rounds it up to 2,000 for him since he always brings so much. Even with his amazing drop rates, bean sprouts don't fetch you that much money, so he wants to try going to a level 2 dungeon where the slimes drop carrots. But Urza tells him about a new dungeon that popped up recently. It's called Nihonium, and the Neptune group is investigating what is dropped there. He's about to leave the line when Urza suddenly invites him to go to a local bar later. It has been 4 days and he is already pulling baddies. But Seto has already got plans for the night, so he has to decline the offer. When he gets home, he waits outside the door for a second since he doesn't know what to say when he enters. He finally opens the door and is greeted by Emily. And with this shot of them, the height difference kind of makes me want to call the FBI. Seto realizes that the house is spotless. Emily has cleaned it to the finest degree and she just did it since she was happy to have a house. She offers him a hot towel and some green tea to relax a little. Seto tells her to rest too, but she's so excited to do stuff around the house that she can't sit still and do nothing. Seto then brings up the new dungeon and Emily states that she has heard about it, but apparently it doesn't drop anything at all. And in a world where everything is gotten from monster drops, a dungeon that doesn't drop anything is really unusual, so much so that he wants to investigate it. He's walking through the new dungeon later when he gets jumped by a skeleton, and he still has trash fighting stats, and when he tries to stab the skeleton, the spear bows straight through it, so he is definitely going to lose this fight. But luckily, a pillar falls straight onto the skeleton, crushing it underneath. The skeleton is still alive, but has been pinned to the ground, allowing Seto to strike it repeatedly up until it dies. And afterward, a drop comes out and Seto picks up a seed. When he finally picks up the seed, it is immediately absorbed and he hears a sound that tells him that his health stat has increased. This is an amazing discovery and he immediately goes to call Emily so that they can check his status together. When they check, they find that his status has definitely risen. It went from F to C, which is an amazing jump in stat points. They set out to start farming the skeletons and discover a few things. When Emily kills a skeleton, nothing is dropped thanks to her terrible drop rates, and if she tries to touch Sato's drop, her hand just goes straight through it as if nothing were there. The fact that there is a dungeon that only he can get drops in and the drops can only be touched by him is something that really shouldn't exist in the world. It could easily throw the world into chaos, but there it is. Seto is now the only person that is able to raise his stats without leveling up at all, and after a few days he has already gotten his health stat all the way up to S rank. And he plans to go to the level 2 dungeon later in order to test out how much stronger he has gotten. Emily is a little worried about Seto's health since he tends to be a little reckless with his health, and she asks him to at least come home at night. The next day he heads into the level 2 dungeon, and when he faces a sleepy slime he has hit a lot. But thanks to his health being at S, he doesn't take much damage and is able to finish off the slime. The slime then drops a huge carrot. Before he can pick up his prize, some other adventurers kill another slime and get a smaller carrot. They then mock Seto for being level 1 and walk away. Then Seba turns around and notices a bunny girl standing behind him. She then says she hates level 1 people, chops him on the head and then leaves. Yeah, this world is pretty strange. Later, Seto was showing Emily how much he made today, and he got 8,000 for the carrots. But then there is a knock at the door, and when he checks, it is the same bunny girl who then chops him on the head and states that she loves him. Emily asks who this crazy bunny girl is, but Seto has no clue who she is. He has only met her once. The bunny girl then chops him on the head again, and then goes to pull some random guy away from his family and kids, and I kid you not, straight up murders the guy. She says that she did the same thing to him, but he is still alive even though he is supposed to be low level, but that just means she tried to murder him too. Meanwhile, 2 guys come over to carry the random dude's corpse and plan his funeral. Rip random dude, even though you only got 2 seconds of screen time, you will be missed. Seto asks her why she came here, and she then pulls out one of his carrots, meaning she not only tried to murder him, but she also stole one of his carrots. And she is literally watering at the mouth because of the giant carrots that they have, and Emily makes the decision to invite the murderous psychopath indoors. Emily prepares a dish with the carrots and bean sprouts that they had on hand, and for soup that was made with only carrots and beans, it sure does look delicious. The bunny girl is in shock from the delicious food that is in front of her, and she dubs Emily the cooking god. Emily is happy to receive the compliment and says that the bunny girl can eat all she wants since she made so much food anyway. After eating, the bunny girl gets up and says goodbye to the two, and she leaves so fast that they weren't even able to get her name. Emily is still happy to have had a guest over for dinner, and she thanks Sato for making it possible for her. And Sato is equally happy to have someone that he can share meals with. Later, Sato goes back into the dungeon since he still needs to earn the money to keep the life which he enjoys so much. He is attacked by a zombie, which he stabs through the chest, but in the process he breaks his spear and ends up having to box with the zombie. The zombie hits him, but thanks to his S-rank health, isn't damaged at all, but is still gross as hell. He wishes he had a long-range weapon so that he didn't have to fight the monsters up close and smell their stanky breath. He finally defeats the zombie and a seed drops after it is killed. The first dungeon seeds gave him health, so he wonders what this one will give him as he goes to pick it up. Once it's in his hand, it is absorbed and his strength increases by 1. But then he notices that same bunny girl on a cliff, and she hops down and chops him on the head again and asks what drop he just got. Startup doesn't want to tell her that he just got a stat-boosting seed, so he just keeps quiet, and the bunny girl loses interest and asks him if he has any carrots yet. And she casually threatens to kill him if he doesn't get her more carrots. At least she doesn't care about his secret anymore, but she urges Sato to leave this dungeon so that they can go to the one that gives carrots. Later, Sato is walking back from the dungeon with a lot of carrots since his strength went up, and he was able to kill a whole lot more slimes this time. At the plaza, he spots the bunny girl, but doesn't notice that everyone is keeping their distance from her and call her the killing rabbit. He hands her 1 carrot and she immediately goes to town on it, shocking everyone there who expected her to murder him. Erza comes up to him and worriedly asks if he knows who that bunny is, and he says he doesn't really know her, and all he did was give her some carrots, and now she won't leave him alone. Erza immediately offers to buy all of his carrots, and she tells him that the bunny girl's name is Eve, and she's a bunny girl that has a killer chop that can even split boulders in half. She's also famous for her love of carrots and her murdering of anyone that gives her bad carrots. So any carrots that she likes are guaranteed to be the best quality possible, so she's willing to pay him 15,000 pylos for the carrots that he has. Sato is shocked by how much money he just made and wants to go to Erza to thank her, but he is stopped by Eve, who still wants more carrots. Sato tells her that he has no more carrots for today, and Eve tries to chop him again, but Sato is done with letting her do that and just catches her hand and tells her that he will get more carrots tomorrow, but for today, he is off the clock. Eve reluctantly accepts that she isn't going to get any more carrots today and makes Sato promise to get more for her later. On another day, Sato and Emily are in a dungeon with a huge haul of carrots, and Sato leaves Emily for a bit to look around a little more, and around the corner, he spots 2 people trying to kill a slime, but even with a metal ace, they can't manage to cut it down. They look exhausted beyond belief and really need a break. Their captain shows up and is enraged that these 2 are unable to kill such a weak slime. He finishes off the slime and tells the 2 to hurry up and follow him to get the next slime, but the 2 ask him for a break. They've been at this for 2 days straight with no sleep and could really use a break. But the old man pulls the "back in my day, we used to walk uphill both ways to get to the dungeon, we would walk through the snow in the summer, and would be happy if we got any sleep at all in a week," and tells them that all this is for their own sake, so that they can get stronger, and the 2 take his words as inspiration and get up to continue through the dungeon. Sato recalls having a boss like that who would give him impossible tasks and tell him that it was all for his own sake. But he is brought out in the flashback when Emily calls for him to take a break with her. She lays out the lunch that she prepared as soon as the food is in the open. Eve comes running up to join them. Emily is happy to allow Eve to join them and offers her some carrot pudding that she tried making, and Eve is brought to tears by the gourmet stuff that she's putting in her mouth. Sato is also really enjoying his food and praises Emily for her cooking skills. But that old man from before had to come and spoil the mood by telling his students not to laze around in the dungeon like Sato and Emily. He mocks them and says that their drops must taste terrible, but Eve is having none of that. You can insult Sato, you can insult Emily, but you cannot insult carrots in front of Eve like that. She gets up and shoves 2 carrots down the throats of the students, and they really love it. The carrots are the best that they've ever had, and they can't deny it. The old man tries to stop Eve, but realizes that she is killing her title for a reason and backs off before he gets turned into a hashtag. And after the man leaves, she returns to Sato and Emily and begins eating her carrot again. Sato thanks her for sticking up for him, but she just wants him to promise to get her more carrots tomorrow. Later, Segato is back at the plaza and is selling his carrots to Erza. She thanks him for bringing so many carrots for her, and he says that he actually got more than this, but this is all that he could carry out with himself. Erza asks him if he doesn't have a magic cart, and Seto doesn't even know what a magic cart is. She tells him that magic carts can be used to store larger amounts of goods in a dungeon and can help improve production efficiency, since he won't have to take multiple trips from the dungeon to get all of his drops back to town quicker. Seto thinks it's a good idea to get one, and that evening, he goes to get one with Emily. They get to the magic cart store and are greeted by a little girl who is the owner's daughter. She goes to call her dad, and an old man with a white beard comes out of the back and greets Sato and Emily. They tell them that they are looking for a magic cart to buy, and he has just the thing for them. A cart that he personally worked on, and it even comes with an inbuilt monster detection system, and all for the cheap price of 10 million pylos. Sato and Emily are shocked that the magic cart costs that much to buy, and the shopkeeper says that regular ones cost around 3 to 4 million, but there's nothing special about them. Right now, he's working on something that has even more added features on it, but there is no way that Seto would be able to afford something like that right now, so he decides to go home for now and have dinner with Emily. But on the walk home, they hear a large crash sound and people running away. A stray has been spotted in the city, and everyone is running for their lives. Strays don't drop anything when they are killed, so the adventurers don't have any intentions of fighting it. But Seto can't just let this thing go on a rampage. When he sees Erza about to be squashed, he leaps in front of her and blocks the blow for her. And once Erza is safe, Eve and some other adventurers attack the stray. Erza is safe, but she is upset that the town is going to be destroyed. Sato runs up to the monster, and the other adventurers think he is being reckless by charging at it, but they keep it distracted for him, and he manages to get close and deal a final blow. Everyone is thankful that he defeated the stray, but then Sato hears a drop sound, but strays supposedly don't drop anything, so he goes to investigate and finds that the monster actually dropped something after all. Sato finds that the monster had dropped a gun. Sato's strength is steadily increasing and he's now up to C rank. In the dungeon, he tests out the gun and fires at a bunch of zombies and basically one-shots them. He's glad he doesn't need to get zombie gunk on his hands anymore, but he still has no way to replace his bullets, so he decides to conserve them. Later, he sees Emily fighting a slime and he wastes a bullet to finish it off. So much for conserving bullets. The two settle down for a break, and as it is way quieter than normal, Seto wonders why Eve didn't run over at the smell of their carrots. He thinks it's fine if she has other things she wants to do, but they decide to save one for her in case she still shows up at their house. They finish up their meal and continue on to the next dungeon. Seto asks Emily if she has ever been to this floor before, but she says hasn't, though she knows the name of the monsters here, cockroach slimes. Sato is grossed out by all the cockroaches that are in the dungeon, and Emily is freaking the hell out. Yep, she's definitely got cockroach PTSD. She finally managed to kill the cockroach and is able to calm down. She gets a pumpkin as a drop, and Sato is just thinking about how to leave the dungeon as soon as possible. But would you look at that, the PTSD is kicking in again, and I can't even blame her. Sato thinks quickly and decides that the only way to stop Emily from committing arson here is to kill all the cockroaches himself, but he still thinks they're gross, so he's using his limited bullets to do it. And he's a pretty good shot for someone who's never used a gun. After the onslaught, all the cockroaches on the floor are gone, but now they got another problem. They can't fit their pumpkins through the door. But if they stay here any longer, the cockroaches will respawn and Arson Emily is gonna come out again. But before that can happen, Eve bursts through the wall of pumpkins in search of the carrots that Sato usually gives her. Eve's appearance distracts Emily from the cockroach problem, and they somehow manage to transport all the pumpkins to the surface. Though despite the natural disposition all men have to carry everything in one go, he's still got to make multiple trips to take it all to the guild. As he returns to get the rest, he finds that it has been eaten out by some sort of animal, and Emily already knows what it is. The cockroaches somehow follow them to the surface, and Arson Emily is once again present. Sato tries to take out the cockroaches with his gun, but he runs out of bullets. But unless he wants Arson Emily to stay, he's going to have to get his hands dirty and squash them himself. By the end of it, Sato looks defeated and Emily apologizes for making him do that. As he sits there, he hears a very familiar sound, and all of a sudden, he sees that the drop he got this time was bullets. Mighty convenient if you ask me. Sato heads back to the guild and tells Erza that the remaining pumpkins were ruined by cockroaches, and she informs him that that was because he had left the pumpkins alone. If drops are left unattended for a while, they turn into strays. Sato is still trying to process the new information, but then Erza tries to shoot her shot again and asks him out to dinner, but she gets curved once more. Sato got an idea for an exploit, and he's got to try it immediately before it gets patched out. He leaves a carrot out in the open to get it to turn into a stray, but the only thing he catches is Eve. After several attempts at Eve stealing the carrot several times, he finally manages to get it to work, and the carrot turns into a slime. He then immediately kills the slime, and it ends up dropping bullets. He then gets an idea to do the same thing with those seeds, but when he's there and tries to pick up the seeds, they keep getting absorbed even though his health is already maxed out. He decides to give up on it for today, but he gets ambushed by another zombie, which then wrestles him until Sato accidentally pushes it out of the dungeon. But surprisingly, the zombie disappears. Sato goes back to the guild to ask Urza about it, and she tells him that all monsters disappear once they leave their floor. That's just how it is. She then tries to shoot her shot again, but Sato once again curbs her. I'm starting to feel bad for her at this point. While Urza was talking, he came up with another exploit. If the monster disappears once it leaves its floor, then what if he just kills it before it disappears? He manages to pull off the glitch and gets a freezing bullet as a drop. The bullet, as the name implies, freezes anything it hits. The next day, Sato shows off the new bullet to Emily and she is amazed at how useful it is. He can't use many of them though, due to how difficult it is to farm them, so he plans to stick with regular bullets for now. After a long day of monster hunting, Sato and Emily are walking back from the dungeon when they run into two people fighting on the path. The Oompa Loompa looking guy is trying to get someone to go get his cart that fell down the path, but it's been a while since it fell, so it's likely going to turn into a bunch of strays any moment, so the girl suggests that they just burn it down. But Oompa Loompa isn't going to lose his expensive stuff that easily. However, the guy turns out to be possessed, but Sato manages to defeat the monster. But the cart is starting to turn into a stray, so the girl tells Sato and Emily to run back to the city and call for the army to come deal with it while she buys them time. But Sato isn't going to just let her sacrifice herself like that, so he uses his freezing bullets to freeze the monsters in place and then has Emily smash them all at once. Thanks to that, the monsters are defeated neatly and Emily's stats go up quite a bit. The two venture into the dungeons once more and they encounter this weird orange glob. Sato wastes no time and caps it straight in the head, and from its demise, a necklace is dropped on the ground. Sato picks it up and tells Emily that he wants her to have it, and she gets all flustered thinking he's giving her a gift as a token of his love. But we all know Sato is about as smart with romance as your average gamer. He tells her that he is giving her the necklace because while wearing it, item drops will be doubled. It was a purely tactical decision, but Emily was upset with Sato's lack of tact when explaining that. However, results don't lie, and the results are that they are raking in the drops. Later, Emily is preparing dinner for them, and Sato watches her prep the food in the small kitchen, and he starts talking about how it might be time to look for an apartment with actual bedrooms considering the big bucks they're pulling in now. Emily gets a little distraught hearing this because she assumes that Sato intends to get a new place by himself, so it's back to the homeless dungeon life for her. But Sato fully intends to take Emily with him, but they're going to have to save up a little more before they start looking. The next day, Sato heads to the guild to sell some of his drops, but Urza tells him that the bamboo shoots he brought are a little difficult to appraise. At the same time, this dark elf lady notices his bamboo shoots and asks him for them, to which he allows her to take one. She then tosses it up and chops it up mid-air, letting the slices fall onto a plate complete with dipping sauce. The lady starts squealing, and it's starting to freak Sato the hell out. He's still got no clue who this freaky lady is, but if she wants to buy his bamboo shoots, then he's not going to decline the money. The lady takes the shoots and gives Sato 20,000 for them, which he is pretty sure counts as a good deal. Sato asks Urza who she was, and she is surprised he doesn't know her. That was Eric, a renowned food critic. Any food she says she likes is definitely some gourmet shit. With this revelation, Urza goes into business mode and offers Sato a contract to be her exclusive supplier for bamboo shoots and even gives him a signing bonus. She starts trying to hard sell him on it, but he was on board the second she mentioned bonus. Later in the Nihonium dungeon, Sato finds a blonde fighting the skeletons here even though they don't drop anything. The girl turns out to be a princess, and one of her men explains that people think the monsters here don't drop anything, but he knows the truth, they drop air. Right? This guy's definitely been smoking something for him to come up with that BS. They are selling the air as limited edition monster air and marketing it as hand collected by a princess. And people are buying that shit up. Well, if it works, it works. Sato notices that they're using a magic cart, and it's making their process, scammy as it may be, a lot more efficient. Later, he is conflicted between buying a new house or buying a magic cart. With Emily's input, he decides it would be a better investment to buy a magic cart and save up for the house later. The next day, they head back to the cart seller's shop, but there they only find Olga crying about her father being gone for a long time. All she knows is that he went to pick some flowers and he hasn't come back since. Emily says she knows the place where someone would go to get flower drops, and they enter a dungeon full of rock monsters. They wonder what terrible fate must have befallen Olga's father, but the dude is just catching some ziz on the dungeon floor. Emily wakes him up and asks him to explain why he left Olga alone to pick flowers. He explains that he needed the flowers for a magic cart prototype, but one of the flowers he needs is only gotten from a floating rock drop. Said floating rock is all the way up on the ceiling, and unfortunately, he suffers from short. Sato and Emily try to help, and Emily gets on Sato's shoulders to knock the rock down and get the blue flower drop. Now on to the next step. They set it outside and wait for it to become a stray. But as soon as it transforms, they're going to have to catch it, otherwise it's going to fly away. However, when he tries to catch it, he is unable to do so because he also suffers from slow. However, Sato makes up for it and fires at the rock with a freezing bullet. With this, the new prototype magic cart is completed, and Olga's father tells Sato he can have it. Sato is reluctant to accept something that would be so expensive, but the dwarf wants him to have it since he saved the town a while back and the cart isn't really tested. So there's that as well. They put the cart to good use immediately, and they are able to carry twice as many items as they usually would, and as a result, they'll make money quicker. As Sato heads to Erza to sell his drops, he finds her being hassled by some dude who can't accept that his drops aren't worth that much. He freezes the guy's arm as he is about to punch Erza and proves the guy wrong by showing that the amount Erza stated was correct. However, the guy isn't about to let silly things like facts or math stop him. He is going to punch Sato, but Sato simply bitch slaps him across the room. Later, Erza and Seto are talking in the back room, and Seto tells her that no matter what, if someone is messing with her, he'll show up with his bitch-slapping hand ready. Erza is moved by this and decides to shoot one last shot and kisses Sato. And that shot was so clear that even Seto couldn't ignore it. More time passes, and Seto and Emily have finally earned enough to rent a better house, but it's also sad to lose their first home, so they decide to keep the lease on this place in addition to the new one, just for the hell of it. Life goes on, and the new place is looking great. However, Eve managed to find out where they live and is here to freeload some carrots off them. Later, Seto goes into Nehanium dungeon and now has to face mummies in battle. He uses his gun to blast it and drops a seed which raises Seto's speed. He realizes that he is out of bullets, but when he gets attacked by another mummy, if he has no bullets, then he's gonna box. After a long day's work, Seto is relaxing at the guild when this red-haired dude comes up to him and asks for him. The dude has a girl on each arm and simply reeks of unspoken rees, so Seto wants to keep their conversation short. The dude asks Sato to arm wrestle him. He saw how powerful his bitch-slapping arm was, so he wants to test out Sato's strength for himself. Seto agrees to the match and the two lock arms to begin. Sato is surprised at the dude's strength and he struggles a bit, but eventually, he wins the match. The crowd that had gathered around them is stunned as Sato finally remembers who this dude is. He's Neptune, as in the strongest adventurer in the world, Neptune. Neptune asks to have another round, but Sato sees no reason to have another match. And to that, out of nowhere, Neptune throws a punch at Sato, forcing him to counter with a punch of his own and blow Neptune away. Neptune isn't shocked by the outcome of his surprise attack and instead is more certain that he likes Sato. He extends an invitation for Sato to join his party, but Sato has no intentions of joining another company after what happened in Japan. Back at home, Emily is shocked to hear that Neptune himself came to scout Sato, but he turned it down. She thinks it must be because of all the great things he's done lately and calls him a hero. Later, he's in Nehanium again and runs into those entrepreneurial adventurers. They are using a new item, Pandora's box, to suck up the air and store it, and this one actually seems pretty useful. They give Sato some of the boxes and he gets an idea for another exploit. Normally, he can't touch the seeds that he gets his drops without absorbing them, but with this, he can store a bunch of them and then use the freezing bullet glitch. He then takes it a step further and uses it with the other seed types that he's gotten, and he ends up getting fire bullets and one other type. He proceeds to farm the hell out of those bullets, but before he can do any more farming, he feels a chill down his spine, and that's when Emily informs him that there's a magic storm coming. Sato heads back to the guild alone since Emily had some shopping to do, and while he's there, he asks Erza about the magic storm since he doesn't know much about it. Erza informs him that it's a storm that prevents all magicians from using magic at all, so all magic adventurers are taking the day off because you don't want to get stuck in a dungeon when your only weapon is magic. Then this beat-up magician comes in and starts begging everyone to help him rescue his friend who is trapped in the silicon dungeon, but nobody's listening. Neptune shows up again trying to recruit Sato, but Sato still isn't joining. While he's here, he explains that Silicon Dungeon is a dungeon where the monsters only take damage from magic, so no regular adventurer would be crazy enough or stupid enough to risk going into the dungeon. However, Sato is just the right amount of crazy and stupid, so he's gonna go and save the magician's friend. Sato moves into the dungeon and he's still able to use his special bullets to defeat the monsters. He finds the girl he's meant to be rescuing, but he's out of ammo. At the same time, Emily and Eve find out that Sato went into Silicon alone, so they go to offer their help. Sato is running for his life and Emily shows up with more zombies that will get him more bullets. And with that, they are able to make their way out of the dungeon with the injured girl. The magician is outside the dungeon waiting for them and he is very thankful, but wants to take care of the girl's injuries. Sato says he's got just the thing for her and shoots her with a healing bullet. Later on, Sato is back at the guild and has got a new drop to sell this time. The drop is a watermelon, but while Urza is still complimenting Sato's melons, she is interrupted by Eric, who once again wants to buy them off him. She takes a bite, and it is just as she expected. After just one bite, it's so good that she starts hallucinating. The others in the guild see the effects of Sato's melons and go, "I want some of that too." After the ensuing commotion, Business Urza, not one to miss an opportunity, asks Sato to enter an exclusive contract with him for his watermelons. Sato is ecstatic at his new source of income and he starts praising himself for it. Meanwhile, Urza asks him if he has gotten his license, yet since he's already up to the 5th floor. Sato didn't even know licenses were a thing, but apparently you need them to go beyond the 5th level of the dungeon, so he's gonna have to look into getting one if he wants to go any further. Sato goes to the registration center, and there's this old guy at the front desk. Sato asks to take the exam and the guy gets all pissy with him, but gets the test ready for him. He takes out a drop from a level 6 dungeon and waits for it to turn into a stray, and once it turns, it's revealed to be a steel slime. As with most problems, Sato first tries punching it away, but that doesn't work, so he has to get a little smart about it. He uses his physics knowledge and blasts the slime with fire and then ice, causing it to become brittle, and then shatter. With that, Sato has done the impossible, gotten the old guy to smile, and I guess he also passed the exam too. As he receives his license, he's already thinking of new glitches to exploit, and when he finally comes up with something, he drags Emily out to the middle of the desert to test it out. He buys a tuna fish for 1.5 million pylos, and that's a lot of money for some fish. He leaves the fish out so that it can turn into a stray and it transforms into that gorilla that nearly destroyed the town. But Sato has leveled up since then, so he is easily able to immobilize it and give it a mafia-style execution. He manages to get another gun, and now he's a dual-wielding gunslinger, and Emily sees the dangers of him becoming a final boss here. But Sato promises that as long as she's there, he won't kill anybody, maybe. Later, Sato is back at the guild and Urza informs him that the Adelbert group is courting the market on rice to force the guild to pay more for it. Sato isn't gonna let that extortion slide, so he's going to go have a little chat with the group leader. On the way, he runs into Neptune, who was also hired because of Adelbert. But his job is to send them on a one-way trip to the afterlife. Sato is still somewhat against the idea of flat-out murder, so he asks Neptune to let him handle it. Sato pulls up on them, and I don't know what they thought they were going to do with their weapons at that distance, but luckily for them, Sato hasn't gone through his villain arc yet, so he just puts them to sleep with 2 healing bullets. After dragging them out of the dungeon, he gets the attention of Clint, the dungeon chief. Clint wants to get Sato to help him acquire a dungeon, but Sato doesn't really see why it's such a big deal. This sends Clint on a tirade about all the tax breaks that the town will get if they get it. He realizes that he lost his composure and wants to cool down a bit, so he, I kid you not, grabs a fistful of sugar and just chomps down on it. He agrees to help since he'll be getting a tax exemption for it, and starts thinking about what he's gonna need to bring on the trip. He also decides to bring Emily along as his little ray of sunshine. As they make the long trek through the desert, then Emily shows why she's the ray of sunshine by lightening up the mood, even if her drawing skills are worse than mine. As night falls, the ray of sunshine strikes again and she sets up an entire portable home complete with full dinner and pizza. As they finish up with dinner, Emily says she's going to go and burn their trash, since it will turn into a stray if they don't do that, but all Sato hears is new glitch identified. They let it turn and later defeat it, getting a new drop. The next day, they test it out and it's a new bullet that can track the monsters as it goes. Once they finally get to the new dungeon, they notice many things, among which there is a tower of trash that a girl has to burn with fire magic. Sato takes one look at her and knows she's been worked to death already. They try to stop her, but she's adamant about fulfilling her duties, but before she can continue, she faints. Sato catches her before she hits the ground and tells her that she needs to get some rest, but she is too focused on completing her task at the moment since everyone is counting on her to do it. Sato has seen this before, and when the person doesn't care about their own health, they end up dying, and he isn't going to let her die even if he has to shoot her. He uses the 2 healing bullets to put her to sleep, and she wakes up in a tent. Once she realizes what happened, she rushes outside to get back to burning the trash before it becomes a stray, but she is already too late and it transforms right before her eyes. But immediately after, it is shot down by Sato, He could have just used his fire bullets to burn the trash. But why would he do that when he basically has a free bullet farm, since every time he kills them, he gets more homing bullets? They stop farming for a bit to talk to the woman and get her something to eat, and she is moved to tears. They ask for her name and she answers that it is Celeste. She explains that the drops in this dungeon are tax exempt until the ownership is decided, and everyone knows adventurers love tax evasion, so they come here to hunt and end up creating so much trash. Sato says it is probably too much for Celeste to handle alone, so they will help her from time to time, and she thanks them for that and then falls asleep. By the next day, her magic has been replenished and she is in great condition once more. She thanks Sato again for giving her the chance to rest a little, and he and Emily tell her that she's welcome to stay in their tent while they are here. She is hesitant to accept such kindness at first, but she eventually agrees to it. Sato and Emily now have to head to the Sekiro headquarters to say hello, so they tell Celeste that she can stay in their tent until they get back. Sato and Emily walk through the makeshift town, and they are surprised by just how many people come here. As they walk, they spot a guy selling jewelry, and Sato is surprised to learn that people buy jewelry all the way out here. Emily takes notice of one of the rings there, but she can't buy it since she is too broke. Sato heads to the HQ, and the Duke informs him of the dungeon's layout. The dungeon produces meat drops on the even floors and vegetable drops on odd floors. Since the vegetable drops make up exactly half of the drops here, they resorted to a competition of who can get the most rare drops in a set time limit. With that, Sato is about to head out to hunt the monsters, but the man stops him and tells him that they already got adventurers to capture the monsters for him, so he just has to work on getting the rare drops for them. Just then, someone comes in to report that they've captured one monster, so Sato heads out to deal with it. As he is standing there, he notices an old guy staring at him and asks what's up with him. The old guy's name is Harvard, and next to him is Eugene, an adventurer whose plant drops are all F rank. Sato wonders why they would bring someone with an F rank plant drop, but the Duke explains that they brought him here so that he can defeat monsters. But since his plant drop rates are F, then nothing will drop and they will have fewer chances to find a rare drop. So there is no time to lose, and Sato tries to finish off the monster with one bullet. However, after it goes splat, it reforms itself bigger and stronger than before. Eugene is watching this and knows that the only way to defeat the monster is to destroy its core, but most people can't see the core. He leaves it to steal the kill, but Sato has a plan to take care of it. If he can't see the core, he's just going to use homing bullets to hit it for him. He fires the shot, and the bullet goes straight for the monster's core, destroying it and dropping soybean sprouts in the process. After his work, Sato gets bonus pay for his contribution, and with this, he gets an idea. As he returns home to the tent, he shows Emily that he bought the ring she was looking at this morning and asks her to accept it since she is very special to him. Later, the two head into the dungeon together, and as Emily checks her status, she sees that all her drop rates went up by 1. And this is because Sato couldn't resist attempting to find another exploit with the ring he gave her. He let it turn into a stray, but when he killed it, it turns into the same ring, but with a drop rate boosting effect. Her rate went from F to E, and there's a huge difference, since she's finally able to get me from a kill now. Suddenly, they spot a rare monster and Sato is about to shoot it, but Harvard is there, and if he kills that thing, it will definitely drop something good, so he elects not to shoot it. However, Harvard has his own dude, and you can tell by how beefy he is that his meat drop rates are good. So rather than letting them get a rare drop, Emily takes off the ring, returning her drop rates to F, and as a result, when she kills the monster, it drops nothing. The competition is getting heated, and Harvard plans to pay a bunch of adventurers with F-rank plant drops to fill up the plant floors to sabotage Duke. To avoid this, Sato suggests that they finish collecting the rare drops today. They put the plan into motion, and by the end of the day, they've collected every single rare drop possible, so Sekiro wins the competition. Later, Sato was walking in the dungeon when Eugene and his gang corner him. Since Sato made Sekiro win, Eugene loses out on his prize money, so to vent his frustrations, he decided to jump Sato. But Sato is no pushover, and if they want to fight, he's going to give them a good taste of his bitch-slapping hand. After beating them up, he heals them and walks away and returns to Emily and Celeste. That night, Emily prepares a feast for Sato and Celeste to celebrate him winning the rare drop contest. The next morning, Sato heads out of the tent and finds Celeste busy burning up trash, but she seems to be pushing herself a little too far and ends up collapsing. Sato runs over to her and catches her. He then shoots her in the back with a healing bullet and asks if she is alright. Celeste slowly regains consciousness, but the first thing she sees is Dolph Rizzler over here, and her heart starts pounding really hard. She calms herself down, and Sato asks her why she is using such a powerful spell to burn such little trash. Much like Megumin, she explains that that spell is the only spell she knows how to use. Just then, some guys carry another pile of trash in to be burned, and as Celeste is about to burn it, Sato uses his fire bullet to help instead. However, there is just too much trash for him to do anything to it. The reason for this pile is that the dungeon master has appeared in the dungeon, and thus, no one is allowed to be in the dungeon anymore, so they are forced to stay on the surface where they end up producing more trash. Sato wants to go and check if they will be getting rid of the dungeon boss soon, so he heads to the headquarters. Meanwhile, Celeste is wondering why Sato is so nice to her, but Emily explains that he was always this nice, even back in Sekiro. Celeste seems a bit down after realizing that Sato will probably go back to Sekiro after all this is over. At headquarters, Sato runs into Neptune, who has been called in to defeat the dungeon master. He thinks it's great that they can finally get rid of the dungeon master, but bureaucracy strikes again. Sekiro has a deal with Hetero that they have to defeat the dungeon master together, but Hetero isn't even trying to pick anyone to send in because if the dungeon master is there long enough, then the drops in the dungeon will reset, and they can start the whole drops dispute again. They are trying to wait it out, but Sato asks why he can't just go in alone. The rules require a team of adventurers with stats of A or higher, so Sato suggests that Neptune can come with him. However, Neptune has already signed a contract, so he can't act on his own anymore. Sato goes around to find someone to help him, but all the adventurers here just came for the tax evasion. They aren't trying to risk their lives. Sato returns to his tent defeated, but as he gets there, he finds Emily raring to go dungeon boss hunting. Celeste also agrees to go since she got her little brother, who happens to be Eugene, to help with the trash cleanup. They head into the dungeon and are on high alert because of the dungeon master. All the other monsters stop spawning until the master is defeated, so they need to hurry. Suddenly, the dungeon master bursts through a wall and starts staring them down. Emily tries to swing at it, but she gets blocked by a force field and falls to the ground. Before Emily can be trampled, Sato fires some bullets to distract the horse and give her the chance to escape. Now that they know about the barrier, Celeste uses her fire magic to trap the horse in place, and Sato uses his special bullets to destroy the barrier. Now that the barrier is down, Emily is able to hit the horse. Sato fires more regular bullets, but the horse is able to regenerate its barrier. But now that they have learned the attack pattern, they can handle it. But they miss one part of the attack pattern. The boss can cast a spell that lowers all your stats by 2 ranks. This leaves Celeste with barely any mana left, and Sato doesn't want to make her push herself any further. So he resolves to take the horse down by himself and tells Celeste to take care of herself first since she is more important. Celeste has never heard anyone tell her that she is important, and that lights a fire in her to keep going. She musters all the mana she has left to cast one more fire spell that breaks the horse's barrier. And this allows Sato to take Emily's hammer and kill the horse. When Celeste finally wakes up, Sato thanks her for her hard work and tells her to keep the dungeon master's drop. It allows her to use basic magic with no limitations, which she desperately needed. The next day, Celeste is trying out her new basic magic and Sato comes over to her and thanks her again for her help. She asks him when he will be returning to Sekiro, and he says he'll be leaving by tomorrow. They both then have the idea for Celeste to go to Sekiro with them and form a party. While Sato has been out of town, Eve has been stuck with nothing but those disgustingly mid carrots and she can't take it anymore. Sato and Emily return to Sekiro with Celeste and everyone is staring because of how beautiful she is. They run into Urza on the road and she is shocked to see Sato with such a beautiful woman. Sato introduces her to Celeste, but all Urza can think about is how she now has to compete with another girl. This is getting awkward, so she gets to the point of the conversation and asks Sato to come by later so she can get some help with the Harvest Festival later. However, Sato has no idea what a Harvest Festival is and neither does Emily, so the task of information falls to Celeste. She gathers that the Harvest Festival is a celebration held every year in Sekiro where people gather goods and let them turn into strays in an arena so they can kill them. Now that the information is out of the way, Celeste asks why they came all the way out to the Nihonium dungeon, but this was Sato's plan. He already maxed out his speed, so he moved on to his vitality and collected a bunch of seeds for his exploits. He then left them out to turn into strays, and Celeste is shocked by how casual he and Emily are about this whole thing. Sato kills all the strays and they end up dropping biming bullets, but soon after, a loud crash is heard in the distance. They head over to investigate, and they find that a rare drop turned into a stray and is wreaking havoc in the streets, and it looks like a coconut. They hit it with everything they've got, but is still alive. So Sato goes with a new plan and chucks the coconut into the air before using the binding bullets to restrict its movements. With it stuck on the ground, he now uses his erasing bullets to wipe the coconut from existence, and after it's gone, it drops a bag. Sato goes to check on the condition of the others and Emily is fine, but her hammer isn't doing too good. As far as hammers go, that one is kaput, but Emily doesn't want to let it retire, so she attempts to straighten it out, but in the process, she destroys it completely. Sato says they can go get her a new hammer the next day, and later that night, Eve hears that Sato is back in town. The next day, they are met with a weapons dealer named Smith, who wants to offer them a hammer since Emily's is broken. He heard that she broke it while protecting the town from a stray yesterday, so he wants to give her the hammer for his company's publicity. Thanks to the party's recent exploits, they now have influencer status and can get stuff for free. Later, Sato is back in the dungeon and runs into the airbox guy. He is happy to see Sato, but the airbox sales haven't been going so well. It's not like the princess got any less popular, but rather the airboxes have no actual function. Sato asks if he has considered setting up an OnlyFans for the princess since she can definitely make bank there. But even though he was joking, the guy seemed to take it a little too seriously, so he persuades him to just sell rings instead. Meanwhile, back at home, Emily is picking out a handle for her hammer when Eve barges in looking for Sato. Emily informs her that Sato isn't here right now, so she heads out to look for him. Sato is in the Telulu dungeon, and he is quite happy with the drop he got from Coconut Head. The bag automatically picks up any drops he gets, so he can hide the fact that he gets glitch drops, and afterwards, he heads to Erza to see what favor she wanted to ask for. Erza asks Sato to go find some rare drops for the festival since his drop rate is so high, and he is provided with a list of the items to bring. Afterwards, Sato receives his payment for the drops he brought in earlier, but this time, there is a lot more change than there usually is. They apologize, but this is because the person that was in charge of the dungeon that drops money was arrested for corruption and spending the entire budget on anime figures. But Sego is more interested in the fact that money is actually a drop as well. He has to test it out and heads to the wilderness to test it out. The money turns into a bird and starts to fly away, but Sato shoots it down and gets a potion that raises the drop rate of a person by 3 ranks. He is a bit disappointed since he has no use for this as his drop rates are already S rank. But before he can leave, Eve tackles him to the ground and begs for carrots. She has finally gotten the carrots she wanted, and Sato asks why she didn't get some with her party members, but she says his carrots are better, and she also quit her party. Eve doesn't like working with teams since when she was young, and I guess they are born with a bunny suit. She didn't like vegetables very much, but she met a boy who came from a drop, and they went through the dungeon together. The boy killed a monster and got a carrot drop, but Eve still hated carrots, so she told him to just throw it away. However, the boy shoved his carrot down her throat and she actually liked it. She declared that they are now a party, but soon after, the boy disappears despite her wanting him to stay, and since that day, she has been the killer carrot-loving bunny. That was quite the leap in logic, but Sato says if she likes carrots so much, she should just get her own. He gives her the potion to raise her carrot drops, and she's finally able to get some good carrots. She feels great about finally being able to get carrots on her own, but after Sato tells her that he's the only one that can get those potions, she begs him to let her join his party. And after enough groveling, he finally agrees to let her join. This was the end of episode 9. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to not miss the next part.